Hey gang, it's Paul with Stud Pack. Welcome back to the channel. I think we can all agree that the kitchen is one of the most important rooms of the house. It's where you do all your cooking, you're in here constantly cleaning, and no matter whether you have a tiny kitchen or a gigantic kitchen, it's where everybody ends up. And one of the quickest and least expensive ways you can upgrade the looks of your kitchen is to install a new backsplash. So in today's video, we're gonna take you step by step, show you how to do that, and we're gonna show you all the tools you need and the methods to use. Let's get started. So what do you need and how much is it gonna cost you? Well, the first thing we decided on is what kind of tile we're gonna put on here. Check it out right here, it's on the counter. This is a dowel tile, little subway tile, 3x6 with a bevel. They call it the Restore, and it's in a bright white. There's 80 pieces per box, and this box was right at $23 where we are locally. That works out to about what, 29 cents a tile, Jordan? So we bought 4 boxes, right at 100 bucks. We can do the entire backsplash in this whole kitchen. Now that you figured out what kind of tile you're gonna use, you need to figure out what kind of thin set or glue you're gonna use to attach it to the wall. We're using a ceramic wall tile, so we're gonna use Mapai's Type 1 tile adhesive. It's a pre-mixed glue right here in the bucket. It's basically a mastic. Think liquid nails, that's all it is. We're gonna glue the tile to the wall. Now I only use this for backsplashes. I would never use it on any tile floor, any tub surround, or in any shower. And there are some other limitations as well. You cannot use it on a glass or natural stone tile. What do you use if you are using glass or natural stone tile? We're gonna put a link in the description below of an awesome website that can guide you through all the different thin sets and grouts out there. Do your own research and pick out the right product for your installation. So how much of this are you gonna need? We found that a gallon of this, about $13 right now, is enough for most smaller kitchens, but there's nothing worse than running out of your product right in the middle of your project. So you need to know the square footage. It's pretty simple. You're gonna grab your tape measure, and you've probably already done this when you measured for your tile, but let's measure this wall. I'm at 8'8". I'm just gonna round up to 9. I'm not doing the math at 8'8". 9 foot is enough because you want some overage anyway in case you break it. And I already know this is 18 inches. So if that's 9 feet, 18 inches is a foot and a half, 9 feet times a foot and a half, 13 and a half, right? I hope I got that math right. So we got 13 and a half over there. Come over here on this side, line me up on that line, Jordan. What do we got? All right, I'm at 7 feet, 7 times a foot and a half for this rectangle. We're gonna add that to our 13 and a half over there. Then we're going all the way up to the ceiling. So I'm gonna measure this rectangle. And we're gonna get a total amount of square footage. And on this kitchen, we were at 32 square feet. Come over here to our tile. Each box covers 10 square feet, so we bought 4 boxes. We're gonna have plenty. But how much adhesive do we need? Well, check it out. It tells you that right here on the product also. You look up your tile size, whether you got a smaller, medium, or large. That tells you your trowel size, and then it tells you your square footage, how much coverage you're gonna get out of a gallon or out of this 3.5 gallon container right here. And now that we have our adhesive picked out, we need a way to put it on the wall, and of course we're gonna use a notched trowel. I'm gonna use this Schluter Dieter trowel. It's 11/64 by 11/64 notches. I don't have a V-notch trowel that's recommended, but this is gonna work fine. Just remember, the bigger the trowel, the bigger the notch. And you can always check out the manufacturer's recommendations right here on the bucket, or check out that website we linked to. Awesome information about how to pick the right size trowel. The next thing you're gonna need is some spacers to put between your tile when the adhesive dries. And a general rule of thumb is the smaller the tile, the smaller the spacer. So we're gonna use these 16th inch spacers right here. We need about 1,000 for this project. It's gonna set you back about $13. So get a bunch and you won't regret it. You're almost ready to go, but you gotta cut those tiles, right? You gotta notch them around the windows and the receptacles and your doors and cabinets. Now we found the best way to do that is just to go ahead and rent yourself a wet saw. You can pick these up for about 30 bucks a day, and they're gonna help you cut the tiles in this direction. You're gonna be able to rip them, and you're gonna be able to notch them. And it's gonna do a great job safely, and you're gonna get a fantastic looking backsplash. Now that you have your tile saw all dialed in, your next step is to grout. And there's not much that you need. We decided to use a pre-mixed grout for this project. It's a little pricey. This was $33, but it has a bunch of conveniences. You don't have to pull out an extra bucket, measure water, pull out your drill and a mixer, and use the timer on your phone to mix your grout. The other beauty of this is that if I want to do this side today, take a break and do that side tomorrow, I can do that. I just gotta put the lid on it and it's gonna be just fine. Now, obviously we need a way to apply it. So we need a grout float. Here's a couple of versions. This is a silicone float, and this is the more standard float that people are used to. And check it out. I'm gonna come over here to this backsplash, and you're gonna see how nicely they both conform to that bevel in the tile, and they're gonna make it easy for us to clean. If I try to take this silicone float and drag it across there, it's pretty hard to pull.
Lots of friction.
It is. This one moves much easier and it's much taller. So I think I'm gonna try this one, Jordan.
Yeah.
All right, grout floats are pretty inexpensive, about 15 bucks. Now that we've covered all the essentials, there are a few other products you might wanna save a little change for so that your project comes out awesome and looks professional. The first one is some simple paper to cover your counter and some tape. You might think this is one of the basics, but we see tile backsplashes put up a lot and they don't cover the counters and they make a mess. Grout, adhesive, and thin set are really messy. Cover those counters and make it super easy for you to clean up. The next thing you want to pick up is a very inexpensive diamond file like this. We got this one for like $7 at one of the home centers, and it does a great job on cleaning up the little chips left over from the wet saw. Just pass it on there like that, and it gets rid of those microchips, and it's gonna make your job look professional. All kind of ways to do that, but we found that's a bargain. The next thing you might want to consider is some metal trim to conceal the edges of your tile at the beginning or the end of a run. And there are all kind of metal products just like these we have on the counter at the home centers now, and of course at all the tile stores. And they come in all types of colors, shapes, and sizes. And one thing that most people don't realize is they come in different heights as well. This tile that we're using on our backsplash works out great with this Schluter Rondeck. But check it out. If we were to use this Schluter Jolly, this is too tall, and we're gonna have a lip here. So this Jolly actually comes in different heights. But once you know the type of tile you're gonna use, then you can use that to pick out your metal trim. Now the last tool we're gonna talk about may even fall into the essential categories. And what are we talking about? A cross-line laser. This is probably the tool that I wish I had bought many, many years ago because we use it for everything. Just in this kitchen, for example, we use it to set the height of all our electrical boxes during the rough electric so they line up with the counters and our tile layout. We use them to set the counters and the cabinets, the upper cabinets. We even used them yesterday to make sure all our lights are in a perfectly straight line without popping a chalk line on the ceiling. And I saw Jordan pull it out. I was so proud of him. He even pulled it out to make sure our vents are perfectly lined up.
True.
Now you can run over to the home center and spend 60 to 80 bucks on a cheaper laser, but you're gonna be frustrated because you're gonna bring it home and you're gonna realize you have to level it yourself. This one, for a little bit more money, auto levels. There's a pendulum in there that does the job for you. So this is in the auto level position now, and I've got a nice cross line on the far wall. I could even turn off the horizontal beam if I want to save battery, if I just need the vertical one. And I can do the opposite. I can just use the horizontal beam if I need it. Now this will also lock the pendulum. Say you're doing a herringbone pattern, something like that. I can turn it like that, or maybe put up a handrail on a stair and get a professional result. Now we've all been frustrated by these things also when we need to get them at the right height. We put them on a bar stool, bunch of buckets, pots and pans, books and magazines. We've all been there. So I bought a tripod for this first. But it was a little frustrating because I had a very limited range of motion. I couldn't put it way down here and I couldn't put it way up here. So I bought this Bosch BP350 telescoping pole, and it came with a mount on it. You simply unscrew it here and it's spring loaded. Check it out, against the ceiling, and it locks it in place. Now we found that we needed a fine adjust, so we bought this Hupar mount with these knobs, and we can fine adjust that laser anywhere we want it. We did a whole video just on this. We'll put a link above in the description, but this is a game changer for us. I can put the laser all the way down on the floor or all the way up to the ceiling. So get yourself a nice cross-line laser with auto leveling, a telescoping pole, and you'll never look back. So now that you have all your tile, all your material, all your tools, you gotta first think about your layout, because you don't want to violate the first commandment of tile setting, and that is no slivers. What do we mean by that? Well, before we tiled this wall, I laid out some of our 3x6 subway tiles on my paper just to get an idea of where all my grout lines were going to be. I really didn't want any small pieces around this window. Once I did this and I could see that I wasn't going to have any small pieces, any slivers, we just let it go and we tiled this entire wall. We actually worked out pretty good because this is a full tile right here. So we ran all the way to our right. The smallest piece we had was right here by this receptacle, but that's gonna be fine and it's unavoidable. You're gonna have some small pieces. And then we let the pattern run long off the edge of the counter behind the fridge. So when you're standing here, it looks like the tile goes behind the fridge. Now, if you don't like that look, you could make it a hard stop and put a piece of trim there, just like we did at the other end, and that looks fine too. So as you can see, we did a 50% offset. That means that we have 50% of this tile over this one. Right here is a 30% offset. Basically, this is 1/3, 2/3. Sometimes you see that done like this, but we think that looks like a set of stairs, so we do it like this. And then you have the ever popular 0% offset. Now, we did this wall first for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was the easiest, and number two, it gave us a reference to know how far apart our tiles are going to be. In other words, how far is 8 tiles? Because we need to know that information over here, because the designer wants the tile pattern perfectly centered between these 2 cabinets. So doing that wall first is a big help to us. Why? Well, I can come over here and measure this opening, and it's 30 3/4. We can go back over here to this wall we already did, and we can measure the tile on the wall and know where 30 3/4 lands. So we're at about 30 1/2 for 5 full tiles. You could also do it this way, right, Jordan? On the countertop with spacers. And it's a little shorter. We found that it creeps a little bit when you actually put it on the wall. So we're gonna use our wall measurement. So we're actually a 1/4 inch short. So we don't wanna put a little 1/8 inch sliver in there, right? So what we're gonna do, we're gonna center our pattern, and we're gonna have an 1/8 inch gap on either side. And that's gonna be fine. We could, if you wanted, we could shift the tile over like a little 1/64 of an inch at a time, huh, Jordan? I know you don't wanna do that. You'd rather have that gap. But either way works. And that falls under the second commandment of tile setting. There's always going to be a compromise. We want the tile to be centered, so we're going to compromise and not have any slivers by having a little bigger grout joint on the sides. Now, can you set your tile directly on the countertop and build up from there? Well, you can if the countertops are perfectly level like they are on that side. But check this out. These were level, and we came back the next day and set our laser on there, and this side was actually a little bit lower. Jordan and I don't know why, but we're going to adapt and we're going to overcome. And how are we going to do that? We're simply going to shim these up a little bit more. Now you could put a ledger here on this beam, just like this little ledger right here, and like you've seen us do in showers, and start on a second row. And once these are set up, you can come back here and scribe the first row to your counters. And that would work well on a large format tile, or maybe even if the tile were flat. But we think if we try to cut this bevel edge off this tile at a slight angle, it's not going to look all that great. So what are we going to do? We're simply going to shim up this left side right here a little bit more off the counter than the right side. And we're going to follow our laser beam, and then we're going to build up from there. So by doing it this way, we're going to ensure a full tile all the way across the first row on the bottom, and it's going to look great. Our compromise is going to be that the grout line at the bottom is a little fatter here than on the right-hand side. And it's going to be fine. It's only for a couple of feet, and by the time the homeowner puts her Keurig and her toaster and a picture of her favorite general contractor up there, nobody's ever going to see it. Now we're going to start in the center here and work our way left and right. It's usually not recommended, but this is a small wall, so that's what we're going to do. We're also going to do it that way because we want our layout perfectly centered between the 2 cabinets. So I'm ready, bud. Let's start laying some tile. All right, our floor is protected, and here's one little key detail about how we tape our counters. We don't put the tape all the way back against the wall. Here's what's going to happen. If I put a piece of tape there, hand me a towel, bud, and then we set our tile on top, you are going to fight trying to get this out from underneath this tile. So simply hold your tape back the thickness of the tile, and it'll peel up, and you're still protecting your counters. Just going to get our trowel, grab some of this mastic, start putting it on. Use the flat edge. I'm going to embed it like that. I think I want to go up about 3 courses, bud. We'll do 3 courses at a time. Flip it over, and let's start spreading it out using the notches. I'm just using pennies as my shim. The store was out of my favorite horseshoe shim. Just like that. Have me one more, bud? I got it. We're going to put it tight against this one and then push it to the right. We're going to show you why in just a minute. Right there. All right, let me get a spacer in the middle, and we can work together and build out. And there we go. Now one of the downsides of working in the middle is, I'm not sure where this one goes. To pull out the tape measure.
Should be 6.
It should be 6, so 3 is the middle. I'm gonna slide it to the right a little, right there. Now we'll use our laser to get this grout joint lined up all the way up, and we can line up this tile by either measuring or swinging the laser over. Now here's a trick that's gonna keep your project very clean, and you won't have to clean a lot of thin set or mastic out from between your tile. This is what happens if you just set the tile and then push it into the corner. All the mastic or thin set's gonna squeeze out right there. Let me remove this, put some new mastic on the wall, and show you how we do it. So try this method instead. Put your tile tight to the one on the left, tight to the ones on the bottom, just like that, and then push it away. And then you'll be guaranteed you won't get any squeeze out on these grout lines. All right, this is what we did in about 10 minutes. It goes really fast. And we don't assume that our courses are gonna be level as we progress. So we move our laser beam, and as you can see, we've moved it up 3 courses, and that beam is laying in that trough just perfectly. And we also are using this one to guide us vertically. So now we're gonna fill in to the left and to the right, and then work our way up to the ceiling. But we have a few tiles to cut right now, so here's all I do. I don't use a tape measure. I hold it in place. I use my Pica marker. I'm gonna mark the left-hand side of the box, the right-hand side of the box. I'm gonna come over here, and I'm just estimating the 16th grout line, right? No need to be perfect. I'm gonna make a mark right there, and I put an X for Jordan. He knows that's the piece he has to remove. So he's gonna head out to the saw and cut that. He does a perfect job every time, and while he's cutting, I'm gonna put the mastic on this wall.
All right, we're out here at my domain, baby, the wet saw. Now this thing is super easy to use. You just turn it on. It keeps the blade wet so it doesn't overheat. Dad marked it for us. I know I got to notch that, and a little extra notch for our switch to allow for the screw. That's very important. One of the biggest tricks I use when using the wet saw is I tilt the tile up into the blade. That way I get a nice square cut. Otherwise you're gonna have a divot. It's hard to explain, but essentially the blade doesn't cut all the way through. So I'm gonna turn the saw on, and I'm gonna show you what that looks like right now. Just like that. And so it's a better cut that way. It goes all the way through the tile instead of just leaving a little divot. We're gonna do that for the other side, and then I'm gonna show you how we're gonna get this cut right here. We've got our 2 notches there. Now we need to get this cut, which is gonna be difficult. On a saw like this, I'm gonna loosen this here, which is gonna allow me to freely move the blade just like that. And I'm gonna make a plunge cut on this thing. Not as scary as it looks or sounds. We're just gonna line that up, turn the saw on. We don't need to go all the way through. We just are essentially gonna notch it because we're gonna clip it off. Watch. Just like that. Now, I'm gonna take these tile nippers. These are definitely something you should invest in if you're doing a job like this. I'm gonna take it right in the middle and just snap it. And it's that easy. But we still need to make our little tiny notch for our screw. So we're gonna come back over to the wet saw, push it down, tighten this sucker back down, eyeball the middle, give ourselves a nice notch, and I'm just gonna chip away at it. I'm not gonna try and do what I just did. I'm just gonna make a couple of passes and get a nice little chip away at it. Little something like that. That's gonna allow for that screw. We're gonna show you that later. But let's go give this to Dad and see how we did. We did good. Try that one out.
Cool, man. Perfect. I got 2 more ready for you right there.
Cool, let's do it.
All right. Now let me show you how we use this diamond file to clean up that edge. Just a little bit, just to get rid of those microchips. Just like that. Now a lot of you may be wondering what's going on here. Well, we're having a custom cabinet made right here to house the microwave. It won't be ready for a couple of weeks, but we want to get the backsplash done, so we're going to end right here at the pencil line. We left a little bit of room for the cabinet, and then we're going to put some sealant there. You'll never know we did tile before cabinets. cool, everybody. A quick pause in the action to show you how it's going. We got our first 10 rows done and it's fantastic. Got 5 full tile across here. And one of the reasons it's going so well is we forgot to tell you about one of our secret weapons. It's an adjustable depth box. This thing mounts to the stud, so you got to have all your drywall off, but check it out. I can run it in and I can run it out, even if I have 3/4 inch backsplash material. And I can put it perfectly at the face of my tile. So I don't need those goofy box extenders, longer screws for my receptacles, or those spacers you're supposed to put behind the receptacle screw to make it nice and solid. Another key reason that we love these things, imagine this box was way back in the drywall like they usually are. It's tough to measure to that box. You're trying to hold the tile and a tape measure and your Sharpie estimating where the edge of your box is. But with this way, it's right out here in the front, and look at that. Look how great that came out. Now, if you aren't able to put in an adjustable depth box, we got you covered. It's called a Groutlet. It's a patent pending device that Jordan and I designed, and it's going to mount to the box that's way back in the drywall, and it's going to give you an edge that you can measure to. We did a whole video on it. We're going to put a link right here. So check out the Groutlet, mount it on your box, and it's going to give you professional results if you can't put in an adjustable depth box. So can we keep just tiling from here all the way up to the ceiling? We could, but then I guarantee you we're going to have a cut tile at the crown. So Jordan and I were wondering, wouldn't it look cool when you're standing back here if there's a full tile at the crown and a full tile at the bottom? And we're going to make it happen, and this is how. We're actually going to start at the top, work our way down, and put the cut tile right here. Our hood is about this thick, and the hood is going to cover that joint. And you won't see it when you're standing back here because it's behind the hood. Can't wait to see how that looks. A couple of other little details we're worrying about. Since we're going to have tile up here, we're going to have an edge right there that we need to cover up. We actually have a piece of the Rondec left over from the backsplash behind Jordan. So we're going to cut a short piece, put a piece there and there. So if anybody's ever up on a ladder on this top shelf getting something, they'll notice we even covered that edge because the devil is in the details. We're also going to have a crown on top of the cabinets that's going to die into this bevel tile. We made a mock-up of it. It's going to look great. We thought about scribing the tile to the crown. We've actually done that before, but the method we're going to use is going to be a little easier and it's going to look great. And yes, the crown is not going all the way to the ceiling.
But what about the dust? What kind of contractor are you?
Don't worry about it, dude. We built a special dust collection system on top of the cabinets and you'll never have to worry about dusting up there. So now we're ready to start tiling from the top down. We've done that before and it is not a lot of fun. But we have a super lightweight tile and this mastic is very sticky, so we don't think we're going to have a problem based on how well these were sticking, right, Jordan?
That's right.
The other thing we were worried about, we don't want to end up down here with our pattern. We'd rather end up like that. So we use this as our layout and determined we need to start at the top like this instead of like that. So let's head out to the saw, cut a couple of short pieces of this Rondec, and start tiling this wall. All right, one more piece of tile left, and I always know when Jordan's getting hungry because he starts messing up.
That's my first mess up on this whole kitchen.
But that'll get covered completely by the hood, right? That's
right.
The whole point of doing this. We have full tile up above all the way to here. This is our cut edge. You can hardly see it, but the hood is going to go right there and cover it. Again, full tiles above and below. How awesome is that going to look? We're going to put in this last tile right here. And then tomorrow we're going to come back, we're going to grout it, we're going to mount the hood, put in the receptacles, and this backsplash will be done. We'll see you tomorrow. All right, it is the next day and we are ready to grout our backsplash. I can't wait to see how fantastic it's going to look. Now we are using a white grout, just like we showed you, and any trash that's in these grout lines, I want to get out of there so it doesn't end up in our grout and spoil the project. First thing I did, I got a utility knife and I went along here, both sides, and I cleaned out any of the mastic or thin set, if you're using thin set, that would stick out prouder than where your grout is going to be. And all those little pieces end up in this crack and they can end up in your grout. So I got my brush attachment on the vacuum, vacuumed the whole wall. And while I was doing that, I noticed we had a few little spots of mastic on the tile, just from the spacers and it dripping down, things like that. So I got this sponge that's just available at the home centers in the tile section, and I gave it a quick clean so it's all smooth, white as snow, ready for grout. All right, let's get started. It's as easy as this. Dip your float in the grout. I tend to go with smaller amounts, and we're just gonna put it on the wall.
A little goes a long way.
It does. All right, this is going pretty quick. We never regret spending the extra money for this pre-mixed grout. There is no anxiety with it. And if you've seen us do some of our other grout jobs, you know what I'm talking about. This stuff starts to go off on you and we're both scrambling, but not with this. And we got all this done in less than 10 minutes and it's going pretty far. I've only used that much and about a third of that is on the floor down here because it's pretty hard to get it on the wall.
That's right.
I'm just taking little scoops about the size, I guess, when you're serving ice cream, right? Putting them on the wall, and then I'm smoothing it out. Good upper body workout. So when I'm doing a floor, I really have a technique. I'll put some grout on the floor, and then I'm going back and forth like this the whole time. Really can't do that here. I'm putting it on the wall, and I'm spreading it out. Trying not to spill a bunch of it. So let's finish this wall, and then we'll hit that side. Backsplash looks great, and I know you're asking yourself, Stud Pack, what's up? You went from applying the grout to a finished project. What happened to all the steps in between? Well, we broke one of the commandments of tiling and the first rule of grouting. Always babysit your grout. Once we applied the grout, we thought we'd do some multitasking, try to finish this project, so we hopped over here in the foyer and did some wallpapering. We got 2 sheets up. Jordan runs in here and checks on the grout and says, Dad, this stuff's setting up like a rock. You better come in here and check it out. And sure enough, it was getting rock hard on the top. So we jumped in here. It came out great, but it made for a horrible afternoon. So what did we learn from our experience, and what can you take away to make sure you don't run into the same problem we did? Hey, bud, you know what? You spearheaded the whole grout cleaning process. Why don't you take it over from here?
Okay.
All right.
I think I got this.
Cool.
Be careful with that thing.
I will.
All right, so let's talk grout a little bit. When we're doing grout, we're thinking of it in 3 major steps. The first step is cleanup. The second step, or the initial cleanup, the second step is shaping the joints, and then the third step is the golden window of opportunity. We're gonna talk about that here in just a moment. Now, this bevel tile presented a challenge because the grout was building up inside of all of the bevels. With flat tile, we're able to scrape our grout float after we apply the grout. We're able to get all of that excess grout off, so that way there's very minimal excess grout on the face of the tile. Now, the reason you don't want grout on the face of your tile after you apply it is because when it dries, if you let it dry on the face of the tile, it's gonna be like impossible to remove it after the fact, right? Grout is so hard to work with when it gets hard. When you're trying to get that hard grout off the face of the tile, you run the risk of using excessive force, and then you're gonna scratch your tile. So in order to prevent that, we just try and get the excess off. That's the first step, get the excess grout off. On flat tile, it's easy. On this bevel stuff, not so much. So we got the sponge and we scraped it off just like this, being careful not to remove the incredibly wet, fresh grout from the joints themselves. So after you have all the excess grout off of your tile, we're gonna shape the joints. Now, popsicle sticks are very popular. I just use my finger, although I'm kind of paying for it today. So maybe, Sharpie, the butt end of a Sharpie, or even like a wooden dowel we were using. We just kind of found one. So you're gonna shape your joints. And what that looks like is while the grout is still wet, after you clean the excess, you're gonna take it and you're just gonna run that radius into the joint of your grout. You're gonna shape the joint. A lot of people skip this step, but it's pretty important, I think, because having a nice clean radius in that grout joint kind of takes your grout job a step up, right? And of course, you're gonna be pushing grout out of the joints, so you might push some onto the face. You're gonna have to go back and clean the excess off, being careful not to remove the grout. Now, if you do remove grout from the joint, no big deal. Just get some on your finger, put it back in that joint, no big deal, because now we're waiting for that golden window. What is the golden window? This is where babysitting your grout comes into play, and this is the mistake that Dad and I made. We weren't really mindful of our window. We thought it was gonna come later, but it came way sooner. We paid the price for that. So essentially you have to sit and watch your grout. You're looking for a window of opportunity where your grout is hard enough to where you're not pulling it from the joints with a sponge, but it's also soft enough to where you can manipulate it and get it real dialed in with the sponge. I hope that makes sense, but how do you know when you're in that window of opportunity, right?
And
You could
Jordan, we found that not only is each grout different, but each bag of grout within the same brand can be different.
That's right. It's always different. We would love to be like, oh, you know, golden window of opportunities in 30 minutes. So let's go do this for 30 minutes and come back. It's always different. Our window has been anywhere from like 5 minutes after we put it down to over 2 hours.
Right.
So it's always different, which is why it's so incredibly important to babysit your grout. It's a commandment, right? So the way that we check is we usually just get a fingernail or the popsicle sticks like we used earlier, and we just poke at our grout, maybe in an more inconspicuous spot, maybe not right here in the front of it, right? But we take it and we're looking for like real compact wet sand where it's hard, but not dry, but also soft enough to where you could remove it with force if you had to. And that's important because that's gonna allow you to come back with a sponge for that final cleaning. Then you can really dig in without removing the grout, without having to worry about doing that. So I hope that makes sense, guys. We're removing the excess, step number 1. Step number 2 is shaping the joints. And then step number 3, waiting for that window. If you guys follow those steps, you'll get a good result. And also, if you're brand new to grouting, don't try and do your whole project. Don't even try and do this whole wall. Do a top and then a bottom and then the 2 sides. And you know what, Dad? I think next time we grout, we're gonna have to come back and watch this video of ourselves telling ourselves this advice because we can never just seem to get this stuff right, man.
Right. We're still trying to
dial it in.
Trying to dial
You want to show them some footage that we got of us trying to save this grout job? It's pretty funny.
I think we should.
Okay.
And you know what I always say, a great grout job can make a poor tile installation look fantastic, but a terrible grout job can ruin the most perfect of tile installations.
That's great. I've never heard you say that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, it's
cool.
nice. And it's so true.
It is.
It's so true. That was a pretty long video, but we sure hope you learned some tips and tricks on how to put up a backsplash in your own kitchen. So you need to get out some grout that like button, babysit it for us, then smash it. The more support you give us, the sooner Jordan and I and the rest of our family are out in Texas fixing up his new house.
That's right.
Drop us a comment, ask a question. Please subscribe if you're not already, and we will see you on our next video.